And that is the story we're tracking this evening. Now, politicians are notorious for not keeping the promises they make before elections. How often have you seen that situation where a politician promises something but then doesn't deliver if elected? Now, imagine a politician who gets vilified, cornered, and loses credibility for keeping her promise. Yes, UK's Prime Minister, 47-year-old Liz Truss, is probably learning some of the toughest lessons in her political career, that everything you promise to win an election may not actually be a good idea. So here's what has happened. So the plan that Liz Truss and her government unveiled just about 10 days ago, which included abolishing a 45% tax on the super rich in the UK, and she was going to remove that tax. That plan has been scrapped, so the tax will now prevail. What Truss said and her team said is that abolition became a distraction from our mission. It's a policy reversal within just 10 days of the announcement. 23rd of the last month was when that mini budget was unveiled, and what followed was complete mayhem for the UK economically. This move comes because the UK's ruling party, even internally, is not very happy about what has happened. The Conservative Party is now a divided house about this. But the rollback announced today is just a small part of a radical set of announcements that Liz Truss and her Chancellor of the Exchequer, that is Finance Minister in our terms, have made. So what did they promise? On the 23rd of September, barely 10 days ago, they announced the biggest tax cuts in 50 years. These would cost the government £45 billion over the next 5 years, but they didn't have any plan on how to fund it. The highest rate of income tax on the super rich of 45% was scrapped. So after that plan, the highest rate of tax would be 40%. And that additional category that gets taxed 45%, that entire section was removed. The basic rate of income tax was then cut from 20 to 19%. Tax for companies that was supposed to increase from next year to 25% was also stopped. So it was supposed to go from 19 to 25%. They decided to scrap that. And there was a freeze on energy bills. So why did they do all of this? Why did she promise all of this? Well, her plan, the Liz Truss government's plan, is to put more money in the hands of people who have been suffering in the UK. The economy has not really recovered from COVID-19. There's massive inflation, very high prices of gas, and they need that for heating. It's a basic need over there. And so the plan was, let's make life easier, let's boost growth, let's reduce taxes, people will spend more, the economy will improve. But that's not really what happened. What happened next was that global markets plummeted. All UK markets were completely bashed. The pound fell to its lowest level versus the dollar ever. And the Bank of England had to come in and, roll out a huge bond buying program to save pension funds. So net, complete economic chaos. Meanwhile, food inflation continues to surge. It went from 9.3 to 10.6%. So clearly, this was a bad idea. Now, why it gets interesting politically as well is because some of you may remember Liz Truss's primary competition was Rishi Sunak. And when she had promised this plan, even before the vote, and she had said that she was going to do this, Sunak has said it was a bad idea. So he's really having a I told you so moment. His exact quote was, borrowing your way out of inflation is a fairy tale, not a plan. He also said, and he warned at that time, increasing borrowing will put pressure on interest rates. That's what's happened. High inflation will now continue and grow. High prices will make everyone poorer. Excessive borrowing amidst inflation is not wise. Essentially, what we have now seen is bad economics and bad policies prevail. The question is, will this be enough of a rollback? Is this a lesson for nations around the world who are grappling with what to do in a very tough position? Remember, slowing growth and high inflation is everybody's problem. It's India's problem as well, of course, not to the effect or extent that we're seeing in the UK and in Europe. So was this just generally a bad plan? What are the lessons here? Lord Meghnad Desai, author and British economist, joining us first on the show to speak on all of these issues. Lord Meghnad Desai, thank you so much for speaking with us here on Beyond the Headline this evening. Now, Liz Truss has eventually had to drop her plan just 10 days after it was announced, part of her plan. Was this the only option she had?
Yeah, in a sense, even before she became prime minister, I am one of the people who had been warning, I had written about this, that if he plans to implement what she promises to do, the pound will collapse in the foreign exchange markets. And we all did not actually believe either that she would do it without doing proper consultation with the Treasury officials, or that he would really be so precipitate. Now, see, another thing is Desai, who is her Chancellor of the Exchequer. He's a real free market liberal. He's a real extreme free market liberal who doesn't believe in all the old-fashioned stuff about fiscal responsibility. So he, instead of just cutting the tax rate from, say, 45 to 40% for people above a certain income, he completely abolished the upper range altogether. And the stock market were completely flummoxed by this. And she also announced a big energy spending to compensate people for paying energy bills. And it is so fiscally irresponsible. And Rishi Sunak had said beforehand that it would be fiscally irresponsible, that the market is completely went berserk. And the Bank of England, which had been fighting against inflation, raising interest rate, suddenly had to not only raise interest rate, but start buying government bonds because everybody was selling government debt. So in a sense, this has proved to be the biggest financial disaster in the shortest run in British history. And I wonder whether she would be able to last very long, because right now there is a Conservative Party meeting conference in Birmingham. And that's the kind of party conference meetings at which knives really come out. And she has been very recently elected and was not the parliamentarian's first choice. First choice was Rishi Sunak. So we'll have to see whether this government can actually function, because the Conservative Party is very deeply divided.
That's, I think, the key question, isn't it? How will this government continue to function with the kind of loss of credibility? You've said that you doubt that she will last, but at this point, what does Liz Truss have to do to regain that credibility?
Well, right now, it's so different from the usual that we don't know what will happen. The Parliament will meet in mid-October. It is right now still not meeting. So Commons will meet around about 15th of October. And the Commons will have to show from the behavior of the Conservative backbenchers whether they approve of their leader or not. Because in the Conservative Party has been changing leaders so very often. They gave Theresa May a lot of trouble when she was Prime Minister, though not this quickly. I think Liz Truss may not actually last very long. If she has to last, she has to completely change her behavior and be much more consultative and much less precipitate and determined and all that. She has to consult her own party. She is at the extreme right wing of the Conservative Party, but even Boris Johnson was not this right wing. So I think she'll have to tone her policies down, or she'll just have to go. We could have another prime minister on the Conservative side in no time whatsoever. I'm saying this because this is a very unusual circumstance for British politics.
Absolutely. It's a hit, of course, for Liz Truss, but it's also a hit for the Conservative Party that has always had the image of the party that knows how to run the economy, isn't it?
Well, that she mistakenly thought, and I said this in print, she mistakenly thought that Mrs. Thatcher believed in tax cuts and more tax cuts. What Mrs. Thatcher did, she deflated the economy for 10 years. And in the last 3 years of her government, she allowed taxes to be cut. So she first cured inflation very severely by running the economy at 3 million unemployed. And she really shook all the stuff out of the economy. And only then, when the budget was balanced, did she allow for tax cuts. This woman just only remembers the tax cut part of Mrs. Thatcher. She's too young to remember any of this. And so she thought, this is the way to go. I know some of her advisors. They are all completely free market, right-wing, extreme liberal people. And they just have fantasy economics. This is just complete fantasy economics. I compared it to Mao's policy in China. Mao Zedong had the idea that the people's will can achieve anything. I think Liz Truss believes that she can achieve anything just by cutting taxes. And she didn't listen to anybody who was saying, but darling, have you added up the numbers? Well, there we are. And this is a crisis, a big crisis, financial crisis and political crisis for the British public.
How do you see it from Rishi Sunak's point of view? And we mentioned this earlier. He is having an I told you so moment. He was her biggest competitor for this position of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and he said that her plan wouldn't work. Do you think that this is a big boost for him politically?
Well, it's, the way House of Commons works, it could be very early on in the session that there will be some motion and the party and the House will divide, and she will not get enough votes to win a division. If that happens, she'll have to go, and the party will have to quickly select somebody else who can command the majority of the Conservative Party in the House of Commons. I'd already read 2 days ago that many of the sort of senior people of the Conservative Party are not going to Birmingham for the conference because they don't want to take part in the charade, because she would normally be the triumphant person. But now the situation has changed completely. Now she is looking like a real mistake on their part. The party has chosen her, but now she has already made enough mistakes to last a lifetime.
Some would argue that Liz Truss has done what a lot of other nations have done. The Americans have printed currency. Everyone is borrowing their way out of this crisis as well. Many nations are deciding to go in for some kind of measures to put money in the hands of the people. Is Liz Truss being singled out because she's a young woman? I mean, relative, of course, in politics.
No, the British politics doesn't work like that. We have had women in responsible position now for 30 years. I mean, this is not news. And we have more than about a third of the members of the House of Commons are women. There are lots of women in shadow cabinets and in cabinets in all parties. She's the third woman prime minister in the Conservative Party, after all, in the last 30 years. So she was a good foreign minister. She was thought to be quite successful. She was ambitious, but nobody thought that what she said about tax cuts and so on, she would do without any proper considerations or consultation with the Treasury or the Office of Budget Responsibility, which we have precisely to check up whether your calculations stand up to a scrutiny or not. She did not consult the Budget of Office Responsibility. She sacked the principal secretary of the Treasury, Tom Scholar, and she went and did something which I'm sure anybody would have told her, this is not possible, this is not financially sound. But she thought she was going to be bold and this and that, and now she's become a complete cropper. In economics, the market reacts by the minute, and as soon as you make the announcement, within 5 minutes, you know whether you got it right or not. And that's what Chris Carter said. We have now listened to the market. Well, they had to listen to the market because the market was giving a big no to whatever she was doing. So she'll have to rejig and recompute her things. And I think he'll have to say ultimately, yes, I will cut taxes, but not immediately. Or if I cut taxes, they'll be much milder than what I thought. Or I will put up taxes something else and cut income taxes. This kind of fiscal irresponsibility was never thought to be part of the Conservative Party, or even of the in the wildest dreams in the Labour Party. I mean, even the most left-wing Labour Party has never proposed budgets like this.
Yeah, so it's a political disaster. It's an economic crisis. Thank you, Lord Meghnad Desai, for speaking with us and breaking that down. How can Liz Truss come back from this? What is the lesson to the rest of the world? To speak on this, I'm joined